and welcome to the Doofcast, a film and TV podcast from Doof Media. My name is Scott Daly, and joining me, as always, he's back on the streets at last after accidentally shooting a child. It's Matt Freeman. How's it going today, Matt?
That's dark. Yeah.
Yes, it is. It is dark.
It's the Christmas season, Scott, and you know what that means.
What does that mean?
We got to talk about Christmas movies.
Oh, he did it now.
We're starting with
the topic.
We're starting with why did you think we were covering this movie?
What do you mean? What do you mean? Why did I? Because the same reason we cover every movie we cover when we're not having a set schedule. One of us goes to the other and says, "Hey, I watched this movie and I have a thing to say about it."
Okay, let me back up. The reason I watched Die Hard is because I was like, it's Christmas season.
But it's not a Christmas movie.
Oh, okay. Sure,
Or is it?
I think we'll resolve that question permanently.
Yeah, that's gonna this is gonna be the definitive answer on that question at last.
Yeah.
Literally 7 billion people have had the same argument, but this will be the final time.
Yep, we're definitely going to get back to this and not just sort of meander away from this and then never mention it again in this conversation.
That's right. We're talking about Die Hard. We've never done an episode on this movie, which I didn't know until you said, Scott, I watched Die Hard and we've never done an episode on Die Hard. And now we're here.
Yeah, we still haven't done every movie, apparently.
Yeah, but we're working on it slowly.
Yeah, but everybody knows Die Hard. Everybody loves Die Hard, but maybe you haven't watched Die Hard in a while. And that's part of the reason I watched it, is I was like, is this really as good of a movie as we remember? And stay tuned to find out.
So we're going to be talking all about the greatest Christmas movie of all time. And then I wanted to wrap up the show, Matt, with some talk about Moana 2 and the explosive box office. And then, you know what? I just wanted to end the show because this is our show and there are no rules and we get to do what we want. I've watched a lot of good television lately, and I just have some TV shows to recommend to you and to our wonderful listeners out there. So that's what we're going to do today. And you can throw in some too if you want.
Yeah, I've been watching
some TV.
I've been watching a TV show. I can do that.
a TV show.
Yeah.
Those are rookie numbers.
You know me.
All right. Well, let's waste no further time and get right into Die Hard. Let's do it. Matt, what is this movie all about?
A New York City police officer tries to save his estranged wife and several others taken hostage by terrorists during a Christmas party at the Nakatomi Plaza in Los Angeles.
This movie was written by Jeb Stewart and Stephen E. D'Souza. It was directed, of course, by Mr. John McTiernan and stars Bruce Willis, Alan Rickman, and Reginald VelJohnson as a child killer hero.
who finds the courage to shoot a man.
I think that's a great place to start. Well, okay, before we get into that, how long had it been since you've seen this movie, and what were your reactions to watching it again?
Oh, definitely many years. I can't even say many years, like 10 years at least, probably. What were my reactions to watching it? I thought it not only held up, but it was better than I remembered. And there's a lot of fun things to talk about with this movie. Mm-hmm. It's a really good script. It's really good at investing you in various things that are happening. Details like, for example, the fact that it's his ex-wife his wife who he's estranged from, who works at the company, and they're trying to hide that. Like that, I feel just that detail is one that really amps up the level of tension that you feel and the complexity of the situation in a way that's really fun. That's one of many details that the movie has where I feel like a lesser version of this movie doesn't have those details, and it's just like it's just sort of more bare bones. So I just mentioned that detail specifically to sort of use that as a microcosm of the way that this is a good script. It thinks things through. It thinks about the characters and their motivations. All of that is working correctly within the frame of what is basically a ridiculous, over-the-top 80s action movie. But like that's what you need for a good, ridiculous, over-the-top 80s action movie. You need it to have that internal consistency and character consistency.
I agree so much. This movie absolutely rips. It's still just as good as it has always been, if not better. I think that's a great point. This is one of those ones that I just like. I've seen this movie so many times, but it's one of those ones that the amount of time I've seen it from literally minute zero to the ending credits is very few.
Yeah.
Maybe once
Right.
before this time. Like I feel like every other time I watched this movie, it was starting 15 minutes in, 30 minutes in, 40, hell, an hour and a half in. It's just
Mhm.
one of those movies when you see Die Hard on TV somewhere, you watch it, doesn't matter. But yeah, I've very rarely watched it from beginning to end. And I agree with you on the script. It's so tight. It's so great. There's a thing I noticed or I caught this time that maybe this is just gonna make me look stupid, but I had never actually processed this before. There's this really wonderful scene early in the movie. It's when Bruce Willis, John McClane, like goes into Holly's office and finds Ellis there snorting cocaine
Uh-huh.
because it was the 80s. Um, and then Holly shows up, and the really awkward, tense meeting between them, where there's also just two other men there with Takagi and Ellis there, and then Ellis goes like, show him the watch, show him the watch. It's a Rolex. And he's like really proud of this watch that they've given her for her service to the company. And basically the whole thing is like, I'll look at it later. And she's like, yeah, we'll show it later. Well, in the end,
Mhm.
when Hans falls, it's that watch. Like I
Yeah.
remembered that like he's holding onto her watch and she takes off the watch and that's how he falls. Like that memory was very clear in my head, but I had forgotten about that the watch itself was set up as an element of the conflict early in the story, and it even pays off that too. And it's like, damn, they thought of everything.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't remember if I picked up on that before, but I noticed it this time. Like, I think the thing is, you and I have trained ourselves to notice these like threads that just before it was just like whatever. People
Yeah.
just say things in movies sometimes. It's like no, everything is there intentionally. Certainly, that's the case in this movie. So yeah, very tight script, very good character stuff, very very good details like that. And we can come back to that. I just kind of wanted to hit the major points that I enjoyed about it.
Mm-hmm.
And this is going to sound like kind of a sarcastic compliment, but I really mean it. Like I love the way the 80s movies did action, where it was clear that no one involved had any sort of fighting or combat experience of any kind. And they knew that the broad American public also didn't either.
Yeah.
Because but like I actually do like it. And the reason is like you got Bruce Willis and sort of your main like odd job antagonist or I don't know the guy's name, but the big tall blonde guy who's the main antagonist who isn't Hans.
Yeah.
I know I should know his name. I'm just blanking.
Is it Carl? I can't remember which one was the one he kills and which one's the brother of the one he kills name wise.
I don't either. And I'm not going to waste any more time trying to. But the point is like, okay, he's a good antagonist. And they're like when they fight, the fight is all about the emotionality and the viciousness and the chaos and brutality of it. Neither of them know martial arts. It's about smashing their fists into each other and bashing faces into things and throwing their bodies around. And Bruce Willis is really good at this particular thing where he just, if there's a stunt, if there's a kinetic thing that he has to do with his body, he just throws his body and he's all sweaty and bloody and dirty and throwing himself and screaming. And like so much of the movie rides on his physicality and his willingness to be believable.
Yeah.
Which really, the funny thing is I love a good modern martial arts movie or just a good kung fu movie or whatever, but like there's a bloodlessness to just like perfectly executed choreography and ninja fights this is the opposite of that, and I enjoy that. That's a thing that I totally enjoy about this kind of movie and this movie in particular.
Yeah. No, I completely agree. I mean, this is why this movie became so important and why it made Bruce Willis a superstar is that like this kind of they don't make action movies like this now, but they didn't really make action movies like this then either. I mean, they did sort of, but like this was the kind of the end of the huge muscly Stallone Schwarzenegger action hero, right? Like that was the huge action hero of the 80s. This movie came out in 88, and it's really like this the death sign of that type of action hero, and the beginning of the average Joe regular looking guy action hero that this movie fostered and dominated for years after this. And part of that is just that John McClane gets the shit kicked out of him, and like
Mhm.
literally by the end of this movie is just so fucked up, like beyond. We were talking about this before we hit record, but like my favorite line in the movie is the first time Holly sees John at the very end of the movie, after she hasn't seen him all movie because he's been, saving everyone, and he walks out of the shadows like with his machine gun screaming Hans, and she sees him, and her reaction to seeing her husband, who she loves and is just about to try to sacrifice himself to save her, is Jesus, because
Yeah.
he's just so fucked up.
Yeah.
And that's so key to what this movie does. And again, like talking about the setup and talking about the sharpness of the script, like everyone remembers the fact that John McClane is barefoot throughout most of this movie, and then there's that wonderful moment where after they've seen each other and Hans has realized this, he uses that fact against him. But like we forget, or I forgot, why he was barefoot in the first place, right? And it's because he has this one kind of throwaway line at the very beginning of the movie where he's clearly doesn't enjoy planes. He's like motion sick and uncomfortable and untethered, and this random guy in the seat next to him says, "Oh, just take your shoes off and make fists out of your toes into the carpet. It'll make you feel better." And
Mhm.
he does it, and it does. like in the world of the movie, he does this and it makes him feel better, and that's why he doesn't have shoes on when all hell breaks loose.
Uh-huh.
And it's just like everything has a purpose, everything has a beat to explain it, and it pays off in like actual fun, interesting ways. But yeah, like McClane and Bruce Willis, man. I mean, what's there to be said, right?
Yeah.
Like, holy shit.
Yeah. Yeah. Great. Like really, it's a really interesting character. Like John McClane is a particular character. I think that's something that maybe I tend to forget. Is that he's not just being Bruce Willis. Like
Yeah.
he's kind of like John McClane is kind of crazy, and that's one thing we like about him.
Yeah.
He's not just like, oh, there happens to be a cop in the building. It's like, no, this is a crazy man. And yeah, it's great. It's
Yeah,
great.
like that one part where the terrorist is like, you're not gonna shoot me. Why not? You're a police officer. You have rules. Like, yeah, that's what my captain keeps telling me.
Yeah, that's that. Stuff like that is a perfect combination of the script being really sharp and him knowing exactly what to do with it, right? Like
Yeah.
the way he delivers that is just so full of character.
Yeah, and this movie like really takes its time at the beginning too. Like the reason we like John McClane so much is not just because he's this badass action hero that does all this stuff, but because we get that, 20-25 minutes setup from the beginning of the thing. We get to meet him, we get to meet Holly, we get to see how they're separated. Like he is ostensibly here to try to patch things up with her, right?
Yeah.
He's trying to make it better, but what does he do? The first thing he notices is that she's going by Gennaro. She's going by her maiden name, and the first thing he says to her, he flips out and starts yelling at her.
Mhm.
And it's like, and then immediately chastises himself about it afterwards, right? And so we see this as a man who is trying to make things work, but perhaps just doesn't have the ability to do that because he's a little crazy. He's got some rage issues.
Yeah.
And all that like goes into why you want him to succeed. It's not just about killing all the bad guys. It's not just about saving his wife. It's about reuniting them and getting the band back together. And like you're just so invested in every corner of this thing.
Mm-hmm. Totally. I agree. Yeah, you're invested in all that. There's also, it's funny. I think because a lot of time has passed since I saw it, and also because a lot of time has passed since the 80s and 90s when I would have been watching this movie, I was way more aware of the cultural criticism angle. Like the idea that the news media characters are,
Oh my God.
like important side characters, and you just said the character's name, but the guy who was who worked with his wife,
Ellis.
Ellis,
Yeah.
like him being just your classic Wall Street douchebag.
Yeah.
Um, the idea that they work for a Japanese company, even,
Mm-hmm.
and it's Nakatomi Plaza, is a kind of thing of the 80s where
Mm-hmm.
it's like this idea that Japan is taking over the corporate world. Um, even down to like, the sort of infighting within the police department, and then the FBI shows up and it's Johnson and Johnson.
The
Um,
FBI, like, it is actually wild that this works as well as it does, because like the FBI characters are basically just like slapstick comedic relief characters in this
uh,
movie. Like I had forgotten this. They are absurd. Like
there's-
it's not just the Johnson and Johnson of it.
uh-huh.
It's him wanting, like, playing Flight of the Valkyries. Just the whole conversation is like, this reminds me when I was back in Saigon, and it was like I was in grade school, asshole.
Yeah.
But like the thing they're talking about, the conversation they have as they get in these gunships and ready to go is, it seems like we're only going to lose about 20 to 30% of the hostages. Sounds good to me. It's just like, what the fuck is wrong with these people? But yeah, no, it is scathing.
Yeah.
With like, yeah, like this movie does not hold back on that cultural criticism at all.
Yeah, I mean, I just kind of gave a very shallow scattershot cross section of the stuff that it's doing and saying. Right? There's almost certainly more. I'm sure people have dug way into this. But I just thought it was, I don't know, it jumped out to me more in this viewing. That's kind of mainly what I wanted to say.
Well, it's interesting how it uses terrorism as like a cudgel, essentially. Like I don't know how much cultural criticism it's doing of the concept of terrorism, but like these are people that are using the idea of terrorism to manipulate people, right? And so it's like it's just this really interesting snapshot of a time, obviously pre 9/11, but we're like, terrorism was a thing. Someone would try to take over, like hijack a plane, and they would say, "I demand you release the freedom fighters," and yada yada yada. And they would either get their way, or they would eventually get captured. Yeah,
Yeah.
this is just a thing that happened, not like every day. It's not an everyday occurrence, but it's like it was a thing that happened, and people just kind of dealt with it. And it's really interesting how this movie, like, just the idea of layering on top of this terroristic, quote unquote, noble cause action with just basic 80s greed, right? Just
Yeah.
like we all we care about is money. Actually, none of this stuff matters. We're all bullshit. We're lying, and we're manipulating people using these lies about some greater cause or greater meaning, and all we care about is money, and that's it.
Yeah. Right. You've basically got everybody in the whole movie only really cares about either money or their career.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Which is sort of a proxy for money. You talk about the news guy who exploitatively finds their kids to put on TV, which is then what leads to their relationship being exposed, which is then used against them. The FBI and the cops are like way too concerned about, they're putting their career survival above the actual hostage survival. Like the police chief and then the FBI guys have their own thing, and there's almost nobody who's like honorably trying to solve the problem, except of course Bruce Willis and the guy he has on the phone, who has been demoted because he made a mistake in the line of duty.
Yeah. We're gonna have to deal with that in a sec, but no, I see what you're saying, and yeah, I mean, like one thing we talked about the FBI criticism. The other thing that I noticed about them, on top of being like just kind of almost comedic relief, this idea that the FBI runs by a playbook, right? That they come into the situation and they are going to do everything by the book, and that is exploited by Hans. Like he knows that they have a playbook and use the play, and they don't care. Like there's no critical thinking within that playbook. It's just like, this is a terrorist situation. We do X, Y, Z, and we do it in that exact order, and we don't do anything else. The idea that, like, in order to shut the power off on the building, we have to turn an entire grid off, and it's Christmas Eve, and we're just going to shut an entire power grid down. And I don't give a shit if you need approval from the mayor. I'm the United States government. Do this. That I think is saying something too.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. I don't know what exactly, but
I just
yeah,
think like
yeah,
it's not kind to the United States government. It's not kind
yeah,
to government ability to address any problem whatsoever, right?
sure.
Like this is very much like it's not it is really interesting how this is one of those 80s movies that's like it's not anti-cop, of course, because Bruce Willis is a cop and we love him, but it's anti-authority,
Yeah. Well,
essentially.
it's individualist, which is
Yeah.
like this is the best thing about the 80s, honestly. Like, so we're totally criticizing the media, which is the establishment, the big corporation, which is the establishment,
Hmm.
and the government and the institutional police, which is the establishment.
Hmm.
And we're sort of, I keep leaving the criminals out of this because it's like, well, obviously they're the villains, but there is a weird cultural angle here where it's like they're European mostly, not entirely. It's like, what does that mean? I don't know what to do with that exactly. But then you've got your rugged individual who doesn't fit into the system. In fact, his captain's always on his ass. He doesn't really get along with his wife. He's probably a terrible father. But God damn it, he's a hero. That's almost what makes him a hero. That's what enables him to be the guy who you need in this situation, is that he's not a good fit for the system.
Yeah, he's a cowboy.
He's a cowboy.
He's a good old American cowboy.
Yippee-ki-yay.
Oh my God, I love this movie so much. Okay, let's just rip the Band-Aid off and talk about Sergeant Al Powell and his. So, like, okay, obviously, the thing we can say here is when they wrote this part in the movie, nobody was thinking about the fact that, hey, maybe a guy who shot an unarmed child should not be a cop anymore. Nobody was thinking about that. Like, I'm not saying they like thought about it and said, nah, it's okay, actually, but they just weren't thinking about it. I mean, like, you remove the real life scenario of police officers shooting unarmed people all the time from the equation, and you can kind of see, I understand why someone was like, this is a good arc for a character. But it's hard to exist in a world in 2024 and be like, really? Because honestly, so I remembered the speech. I remember the I shot a kid speech, right? Like that is a very burned into my mind part of it. The part of the movie I had forgotten was the 11th hour. The guy that was hanging by his neck for 20 minutes is still somehow not dead and comes back to life at the very end of the movie. And we have this slow-mo sequence where Sergeant Powell has gotten over his justified fear of pulling his gun out because he shot a child and gets his power back by shooting the criminal. I'd forgotten about that part of it. And it's just, it does leave on a movie that I love. It left a little bit of a sour taste in my mouth, just a little bit.
It's part of me really wants to interpret it as a kind of intentional, ironic statement of some kind. I don't know what exactly that statement would be. You just reminded me, right, that Bruce Willis is made equivalent to a cowboy. He's a kind of throwback.
Yeah.
And there is a lot of Western sort of concept behind this movie. And the idea, like Westerns, the protagonists are often pieces of shit.
Yeah.
And Westerns are taking place in a world of moral grayness where there's very often no right choice. There's only wrong choices, and the hero at best is gonna choose the least wrong of them.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, I guess in that world, in this cowboy world, it is a kind of like within that moral framework. That's the kind, like the cop pulling the gun at the last second is the kind of thing that would fit right in a nihilistic Western. But it's a weirdly off note in a movie that's sort of trying to be like bombastically heroic. Like you've got like the fact that moment is matched with like brass swell of music. Like
Yeah.
he did it. Yeah.
I mean, that's the framing of the movie, right? Is that
Yeah.
he's like, this is his arc. This is his, like, he was riding a desk because, not importantly, not riding a desk because like he was punished for his mistake. The framing of the movie is that he chose to become a desk jockey because he was afraid of pulling his gun on the streets again and felt like he couldn't be on this, which is really fascinating, right?
Yeah.
Like, this wasn't like I was punished for my, like, okay, here's the interpretation I have. The interpretation I have is, I don't think the movie ever actually says the kid died. I
Yeah.
don't think it does. And I was listening very closely to this. So I think the kid just lived. So he shot a kid. It was a serious thing. Fortunately, the kid pulled it out and had no lasting
Yeah.
damage to him. But obviously the trauma of this is still living with our cop today, and we don't have to worry about the other side of it, the victim side of it, because he's okay, essentially, right? Like,
Yeah.
that's I think in my head and in their head when they were writing this whole thing, that's, I think, what was there. And it makes a lot of sense in that mind, like, right, like, I fucked up and it was okay, everything ended up okay in the end, but I can't get over it, and I need to get over it. You're a cowboy. You're like Bruce Willis. You're like John McClane. You two are two peas in a pod in a broken system, and we need this guy on the street. And so he's got to find a way to get over this, to get back out there, because we need people like this. Now, of course, in 2024, saying that is like, we all know, right? We all know this is a situation that we've seen way too many times in real life now for this to work anymore, and they wouldn't write it this way anymore. But that's got to be it, right?
Yeah, I think you're right. It's funny, like, I mean, literally just the way movies treat getting shot. It's like, well, he's probably fine. Like,
yeah.
unless he was a bad guy. If he was a bad guy, he's dead.
Yeah.
And then don't worry about it because he was a bad guy.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I think you're right. I mean, like, it's funny how we've had two Judge Dredd film adaptations, and both of them basically have, well, not really, but I was going to say both of them kind of have this idea in them where it's like, look, you got to be willing to accidentally murder some innocent people. If, like, in the course of serving justice, it's just part of the job, without irony. so it's a popular theme.
I mean, it is very true that John McClane, like, several times throughout this movie, sits back and watches as the terrorists execute people, and doesn't do anything, right? And the movie is kind of constantly telling us, like, that was the right decision. You have to do that. Like, you'd be dead too, John, is what he tells himself. And then when it happens to Ellis, like, it's Powell talking to him off the ledge and being like, there's nothing you could do. I know it. You know it. We all know there's innocent people die sometimes. This is just the price we pay for being cowboys. And so, yeah, I mean, that's all in the movie for sure.
Yeah, I think you're right that it's like they chose to make the idea of he accidentally shot a kid, and they picked something that 30 years later is like, oh God, no, you don't say that. Like, that's not funny to anyone anymore.
Yeah. Which is, I mean, it's a shame in that it's just a part of the movie that's aged the worst, because I really, really love Reginald Viljohnson's character. I mean, I love Reginald Viljohnson. Of course, everyone knows he's basically just playing his Family Matters character here. Like, he just, this character goes home and then is yelling at Urkel. Like, that's just what happens.
Yeah.
But I love him as an actor, and I love this character. I love every bit of this character. I love the introduction of the character when he's at the store buying a bunch of donuts for his pregnant wife. Which, by the way, the movie never, like, confirms whether she actually has a pregnant wife at home. Like, the store owner doesn't believe that at all. He gets so many sticky buns, though. Like, he really does get an absurd amount of food.
No, that's great. Yeah, I agree. I think one of my favorite, like, just from the enjoyability standpoint, sequences is him walking out of the Nakatomi Plaza. You know, we know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
right? Because and we're like cutting back and forth between him and Bruce Willis, and him, radioing back, yeah, there's nothing going on here. And then he
Yeah.
gets in the car, and the body falls on the hood, and immediately the terrorists start shooting machine guns at his car
Yeah.
as he's screaming and then backing up and goes over the ledge. It's just great. It's a perfect 30 seconds.
Yeah,
And
and
that
McTiernan puts the camera in the car with Al in that
Mhm.
moment, right? So we see the body hit the windshield from inside the car with him. It's a
Yeah,
great shot.
it's
And
great.
I really like it too, because up until that point, they kind of set this guy up as like the bumbling idiot cop, right? Like there, we already talked about the joke with him stuffing his face with food at the convenience store. He goes up to the place and is not really suspicious at all. We know what's going on there, so we're seeing him not be observant. And then yeah, he's like glibly talking into the radio as the body is about to land on his car.
Yeah.
But like the second that happens, like a switch flips, and the movie's like, no, actually this guy rules,
Yeah.
and he's going to be John's greatest ally on the outside.
Yeah.
It's great. It's great kind of subversion of tropes there, I think.
Yeah, I agree. Just the last thing about that sequence that I love is this shot. It's like an extreme low angle of Bruce Willis looking down. So it's from outside the build. The shot is from outside the building. Bruce Willis is looking down through the hole in the glass that he just made and goes, "Welcome to the party, pal." It's like that's it's perfect John McClane thing, perfect shot, perfect everything about it.
Mm-hmm.
Like the movie really knows what it's doing, really knows what it is. It's almost like they knew they were making a classic.
And that's really surprising too, because like they did not have a lot of faith in this movie, right? Like I think Bruce Willis got paid like $5 million for his role, which is like a record at the time. The whole budget for the movie was 25 to 35 million, and so one actor getting 5 million was like huge. They needed apparently special approval from Rupert Murdoch because it was a Fox movie at the time to do that. But they really didn't have a lot of faith in how good the movie was going to be. Like if you look at some of the original posters, they really kind of downplay the Bruce Willis of it all, because if you remember, at the time of this movie coming out, Bruce Willis is most known for Moonlighting, a comedy sitcom on television. He's known as a comedy guy, not an action guy.
Mhm.
And so I think they were afraid to push Willis too much in the movie. And so a lot of the early advertising focuses more on the building than on Willis. And I actually read that like the movie came out, people were loving it. Everyone was talking about how great Bruce Willis does. And Fox had to like rush updated marketing to focus on Bruce Willis more, because people were loving Bruce Willis so much. So it's really interesting how the stuff just kind of happens like that sometimes.
That's so funny. And I love that. I mean, I guess just a meta thought along those lines is that's a great example of how I think the film industry really does fall into these ruts of like, we know what's popular. We know what does well.
Yeah.
And that's what they fund, and then it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy because, that's the only kind of movie you're making, so that's the only kind of movie people are seeing.
Yeah.
And then they see something like, a comedian tries to be Batman, or a comedian tries to be John McClane, or I'm noticing a pattern here, and they have no faith in it, and then everyone actually loves it and think it's awesome because people have their own tastes actually, that are not informed by what they've been told they should like, and that's what happened here.
Yeah. You know what else I really like about this movie? I like that the bad guys weren't just like faceless mooks, right? Like every one of them kind of has their own little mini story within. I mean, we'll talk about Alan Rickman in a bit, but like you already talked about, I think Carl, like the blonde nemesis, but like the reason he's the blonde nemesis is because his brother was the first guy that McClane killed. Ironically, like the only one that McClane killed incidentally. Like they fell downstairs and the guy broke his neck. Like he didn't snap the guy's neck, he didn't shoot him. That's just the way that happened. And so that powers him through. But like each one of these characters I feel is very, very memorable. Like even Theo, like the nerdy guy who's working on the locks the whole time.
Sure.
Like I just feel like it does a good job of making us see each member of the group, the bank robbery group, as a distinct person. And that's another thing. Like there's not too many. I think there was 12 total and John is like kind of slowly whittling them away. Like this is not like a John Wick movie where he just kills hundreds and hundreds of people throughout the movie. There are 12 hostages. There's one of him, and he's slowly whittling them away. With great difficulty, taking injuries himself every time he does, and that is part of what makes it feel. I don't know. It's like it's kind of like the Alien Aliens comparison, right? Where
Hmm.
like you just have too many things, it kind of loses the effect of how difficult it is to overcome them.
Yeah, I totally agree. That's one of the things I appreciate about the script and the directing is it gives us space to individualize each of these. I keep calling them terrorists. They're actually just robbers,
Yeah.
basically. But yeah, I mean, I don't think I know all of their names the way that I know all of the Colonial Marines names, but I don't think that matters. I think like they're drawn quite vividly with a few details, and you're like,
Yeah.
yeah, the guy who was at the front desk and
Hmm.
the guy who was breaking into the vault. Like these are characters, and they all and you remember what happens to everybody. But yeah, let's talk about. I mean, everybody's waiting for us to talk about Alan Rickman. Worried that we're not going to talk about Alan Rickman. The problem with talking about Alan Rickman is like, yeah, everybody knows he's the best part of the movie.
Yeah. He's so good.
Yeah.
He's so like and this is actually here's why the movie is one of the greatest action films of all time. It's not because Alan Rickman is great as Hans Gruber. It is. It's not because Bruce Willis is great as John McClane, which is true. It's because of the sequence in which they bump into each other.
Uh-huh.
And we have this whole sequence where Alan Rickman is putting an affect on his voice. We're not sure if Bruce Willis is buying it or not. And we take the time to do this sequence where the two characters who haven't seen each other get to interact before the end of the movie. I
Uh-huh.
love that. I love that sequence. I always think it's longer than it actually is.
Yeah.
That they were like going around the building together for a longer time because it's so memorable. It just feels like it's a bigger chunk of the movie.
I honestly, it's so funny you say that because like as I was watching this movie, I like went to microwave myself a bowl of soup when that started, and like by the time I sat down with the soup, it was over.
Yeah.
Like that,
It's really quick.
it's
Yeah.
such a shorter. I agree. I thought it was a longer period. I thought it was like them bumping around the building together for a while, and it's like no, it's like a scene basically.
Yeah.
Um, that's great. I mean, yeah, like that's he is simultaneously sort of channels some of the like sniveling sheriff of Nottingham
Yeah.
villain energy, but also keeps it down the middle, keeps it grounded. Um, is a believable human being, has emotional reactions to things. He's conniving and smart, and it makes him like a worthy adversary because very
Yeah.
often like you'll kind of think that maybe John McClane has one over on him, but then he actually gets the upper hand again, which you want to get a sense that your antagonist is actually worthy, right?
Yeah.
Um,
Mhm.
and not only on the script level but on the performance level, he's just this like super charismatic, compelling dude.
I mean, just getting down to the choice, the dialogue, like choices, like the
Yeah.
way he says phrases and words. It's just remarkable. Like
Yeah.
it's stuff that like they didn't write in the script for him to say it that way.
Uh-huh.
He just does it, and it makes it brilliant. And this is Alan Rickman. This is what he does so well. And yeah, I mean, it's one of his greatest roles. He almost didn't do the picture, which is just wild to think about how different this movie would have been without Hans Gruber as Alan Rickman. Like it's I can't imagine at all.
Yeah, I think maybe my recollection is there was a worry that he didn't want to get typecast as a
Yeah.
villain.
Yeah.
And really, I mean, I don't think he did. He did Sheriff of Nottingham, right? But
Yeah.
I think most of the things I can think of him in are not
So
villainous. So
I have a question for you. So and this might sound like I'm about to be mean to Alan Rickman, which I don't think I am, but because I think this was all intentional in the performance. But the moment, so there's that moment where Alan Rickman jumps down from checking out the bombs, and again McTiernan, which is just like we'll probably end this episode talking on how great a director McTiernan is, but McTiernan chooses to shoot this from the ground. We see Rickman land, and bam, right next to him, bare feet, and so we know it's McClane before we've even panned the camera up.
uh-huh.
And in this moment, like we see Rickman takes a pause to kind of figure out what to do, and then immediately goes into this crying, screaming fit. Oh no, don't kill me.
Uh-huh.
And like, it's kind of bad. So like, I mean, like, this is the thing. Like, Bruce Willis, like John McClane compliments him on his accent after he's figured out who it is, right?
Uh-huh.
But it's not great. Like,
No.
like part of me thinks this is intentional though, that like he kind of does a bad job of pretending to be scared and then of throwing his voice a little bit.
Yeah. I simply agree that Hans Gruber is not a very good actor.
Yes.
Um,
Yes.
and Alan Rickman is perfectly playing Hans Gruber doing a bad American accent through his fake German accent.
Oh no, please don't kill me.
Yeah. I mean, I actually think it's great because it's like Hans Gruber, the character, is extremely concerned that he has just stumbled across the guy who's killing all of his men.
Yeah.
So he's not faking that. He's faking the overwrought. Oh no, I'm panicking
Yeah.
because I'm just some random guy. I don't know. I get what you're saying, but I think I don't know. I thought it was good.
Yeah. I think it's great. I think that's why I meant like it's gonna sound like I'm being mean to Alan
Yeah.
Rickman. I'm not. I just genuinely agree with you. And I think that's part of the fascinating thing that is Hans Gruber is like he has this brilliant plan, he's executing on this brilliant plan, and yet things keep going wrong. And we kind of see him slowly lose his composure more and more over the course of the thing. And part of that is like he might be good at, maybe just like the FBI, he might be good at his playbook, but on throwing audibles when different things happen, he just doesn't really know what to do. Like, it is kind of absurd that one dude was able to beat all these guys, right? Like, it's one guy. I mean, yes,
Yeah.
it's John McClane. It's one guy.
Yeah.
Just shoot him.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. I love that. So I just want to say the thing for me that made me decide this is a Christmas movie.
Here we go. We're back.
The specific thing is, I'm pretty sure I didn't go back and rewatch this, but you know, as toward the end of the movie, as McClane is trying to figure out how he's gonna deal with the situation of these guys coming around the corner, and his gun is, I forget exactly the exact dynamics, but he looks over and he sees the tape, and it's like Christmassy tape.
Yeah,
it's like Christmas present tape. And then you cut away from this. The funny thing is, it's been so long since I saw the movie that I actually got to have the experience of being like, why are we cutting to the tape? What is the significance of the tape?
Yeah.
And then of course, as we build up to the moment, I was like, oh yeah. And then I remember, and then because he has the guns taped to his back, which he then pulls off and shoots the guys. So the point is, it was the Christmas tape. There's actually Christmas trees and Christmas shit all over in the background, and like, not in every shot, that would be an exaggeration, but it's pretty prolific. But I love that it's Christmas tape. I just wanted to mention that there's a detail that I don't know that I noticed before.
Yeah, so I have the most like boring take on is Die Hard a Christmas movie, which is yes, like just depending on how you define what a Christmas movie is. Like, it's a movie that takes place during a holiday party on Christmas Eve. There is Christmas stuff everywhere. Like, yes, it's a Christmas movie. Like, here's the thing though, people have a lot of attachments and watch a lot of different movies. Like, my mom would watch Wizard of Oz every Christmas Eve. Is Wizard of Oz a Christmas movie? Well, no, there's no Christmas in Wizard of Oz, but if it's a movie you watch every Christmas, it's a Christmas movie. Some people watch Lord of the Rings and Harry Potter like every Christmas, and Harry Potter at least typically has like a Christmas scene in each one of the movies. But like, I just don't care enough. Like, sure, it's a Christmas movie. It takes place on Christmas Eve. There's Christmas trees everywhere. Like, the reason John McClane is in the building is because there's a Christmas party in the building. That's why he's there. So like, how else would you define a Christmas movie in this sense? Like, do you need Santa to be there? I don't know. Like, do you like the only way it's not a Christmas movie is if you are specifically defining a Christmas movie not by like the trappings and trimmings of Christmas, but by some sort of like thematic or moral valuing that resonates with the holiday season. But I think that's boring and limiting. Like, it's a Christmas movie.
Um, yeah, I don't really care about this at all, by the way. I just,
Yeah, I don't really either.
yeah, I just, in fact, it's one of those things where I'm like, oh, that's kind of a fun idea. The idea that it might be a Christmas movie. And then if somebody really strongly feels that it's not, I'm just like, who cares? Like concepts are all made up, you know? So like
Yeah.
there's no fact of the matter to this. It's not written down somewhere in the vaults of heaven whether or not it's a Christmas movie. So whatever. Let's enjoy looking at doing this very unusual thing, which is to take a violent action movie and saying it's a Christmas movie.
Yeah.
That's kind of fun.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's really all I have to add there. I just
I agree.
yeah.
All right. Do you want to talk about the Die Hard franchise a little bit here? Because I don't think we've done any episodes on any of these movies. So let's talk about it a little bit.
Yeah. So for my part, I've only ever seen, I think, this one and I think the next one, and even that one, I think I've probably only seen it once. So I'm just super not experienced.
I just want you to know here in front of everyone that is fucking crazy to me.
Maybe. So, to defend myself from your attack, you, as you just said, most of the Die Hard watching I did was because it was on TV a lot. Like very, very rarely, if ever, did I go like rent Die Hard from Blockbuster Video, and I don't think I ever like watched it on streaming on purpose. And I think Die Hard is just a movie that was on TV a lot more than Die Hard 2, and certainly more than any of the later ones. So
yeah.
That's my explanation. Is it wasn't shoved into my face.
I feel like Die Hard with a Vengeance was on TV all the time, though. Is my reaction to that. Like, I'm pretty sure I saw at least part of Die Hard with a Vengeance before I saw Die Hard, just because I felt like it was on TV all the time.
See, that's actually like kind of possible because Die Hard would have come out way before we were able to watch it, whereas Die Hard with a Vengeance would have come out. I don't actually know when Die Hard with a Vengeance came
95.
out. 95.
Then
we
optimal us watching adult action movie time. 10 years old.
Yeah, so that actually does mildly surprise me that I wasn't into it.
Yeah. So my opinion on this franchise is that, like, first of all, we pretend that the ones that took place in the 21st century don't exist. Live Free or Die Hard, and A Good Day to Die Hard, which has Jai Courtney as John McClane's son, Jack. We just pretend like those movies don't exist. Although I will say, like, parts of Live Free or Die Hard, the fourth one, I liked okay. I mean, his daughter's in it, and it's played by Mary Elizabeth Winstead, who's an actress I really like a lot. It also has Justin Long in it, which, you might have.
Scott, you just made me aware that I've seen this movie.
Really?
I just forgot about it.
It's the one where he throws a truck at a plane or something, at a helicopter.
You just took out a helicopter with a truck.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's the only thing I remember too.
Yeah. I remember Justin Long being annoying, but that's because, like, that's what Justin Long does in movies. That's what he does. But so Die Hard 2 is an okay movie. So Die Hard 2, I think, suffers from the sequel, the sequelitis of it all, in that, like, it's just, what if we do this again, but this time instead of a building, it's an airport? And then you're like, oh, well, that's just innately less fun.
Yeah.
Like, the building part of it really, really worked. It's also not directed by McTiernan, and so it's not a very good movie. Like, it was fine. I enjoyed it because I enjoy John McClane, but William Sadler is the bad guy in it, and I enjoy William Sadler, so it's an okay movie. But Die Hard with a Vengeance, I think I actually read recently that some people don't like this movie, which I was shocked to find out. I think this is a great movie. It's directed by McTiernan again. The interesting thing about this one, Matt, is this was not originally written as a Die Hard film. I believe it was written just as a movie called Simon Says, and they like retrofitted it into being a Die Hard film.
Interesting.
Which is fun, and I like it because of that. It it is a sequel to Die Hard in that, it's John McClane, and that we're doing a lot of the same things we do in Die Hard and the same kind of style, but it's not like this is it's going to be him in a different situation that's just like the last one but different. It's a movie where uh John McClane and Zeus, played by Samuel L. Jackson, are running around the city of New York trying to stop a terrorist from blowing things up, and it's cool. It's really cool. It's really interesting. Um, the part that I remember, I think the first Die Hard scene I ever saw was where the two of them are trying to solve like a logic puzzle of how to measure out correct amounts of water, because like I keep forgetting you haven't seen this movie, so I haven't like laid out the general plot at all. But it's Hans Gruber's brother is well, I don't want to spoil the movie for you since you've never seen it, but um, he's pretending he's a guy named Simon, and he's calling them on the phone and having them run around the city doing various tasks. Simon says, right? Simon says, "Go to this place at this time and be there, or I'm going to blow up the school," type thing. Um, and so it's just really different, but fun at the same time.
Yeah, that does sound fun. Yeah, I think that's that's why there probably should have been one or at most two diehards. Is that like if you're gonna do Die Hard, it's like, well, Die Hard is a specific plot. It's not like Predator or whatever, where it's like the gimmick is that there's a predator. It's like, no, the gimmick is that you've got a man trapped in a tower and he has to kill terrorists, and you can't really do that more than once before you start to ask, why does this guy keep ending up in this situation? So I'm glad. Yeah, it's good to hear that it's different. But yeah, I'll watch it. I'll watch it.
Yeah. One thing, so um, there's a scene very early in the movie. This is actually Simon says he makes John McClane go to Harlem, I believe it is, wearing a sandwich board that says "I hate N-word" on it. That is the first thing he has him do, and that's how Samuel L. Jackson's Zeus comes in contact with John McClane, because he sees him wearing the sandwich board and obviously walks up and goes, "Hey, what the fuck, man?" But in the TV version of Die Hard,
Uh-huh.
the sandwich board just says, "I hate everybody." And it's just really fun seeing the black people of Harlem react to that sandwich board with anger and like just like to be that personally insulted.
How
by a
dare
guy
you?
just saying, "I just hate everybody."
How, that's great. They didn't
That's
even
great.
they didn't even try to make it
No, they did not
to make it
try.
racist in an acceptable way.
Yeah. So that's Die Hard with a Vengeance. We have to come back and do an episode on it. I can't actually believe that you've never seen this movie. That's so
Well,
absurd to think that you, Matt Freeman, have not seen Die Hard with a Vengeance.
yeah, let's schedule it.
Yeah, we'll do it.
All right.
All right. So anything else you wanted to say about Die Hard? I like watching this movie just made me sad all over again about Bruce Willis, who, is suffering from a I don't even know what it is exactly, but I believe he's completely nonverbal now.
Yeah.
He can't talk anymore. He was an avid reader and he can't really read anymore. It's very sad. It's just a very sad way to go, and he's just going to kind of continue to get worse. So, I mean, I just like that. I love that we get to treasure him as a performer while he's still alive, and he's really really good at his job. That's for sure.
Yeah, I agree. Love him.
All right, Die Hard. Wow. Matt, what Christmas movie are we doing next week? Just kidding. We're not actually doing like a whole month of Christmas movies, I don't think.
No, I don't think. I mean, it would be kind of funny if we just accidentally did that, but I don't know what we're doing next week.
Mm-hmm. Next week, I believe we're attempting to do Rings of Power.
Oh,
as
yeah.
long as I finish watching the series.
Yes. Well, shit, now I can't talk about the one TV show that I was going to talk about.
Yeah, we're doing that next week. So here's the thing, though. Christmas is coming up. I'm running a little low on money, and we needed our Amazon check to clear. So we're talking about Rings of Power next week.
Yeah, we're going to give it a glowing review once we get around to watching it. Doof.
Yeah, so really all I wanted to do here, Matt, was just briefly, I think this has been a really weird year for movies, where there've been some definitely good movies, but the collective kind of conversation around film as we get to the end of 2024 has been that it's been kind of a down year. And I haven't seen a lot of films, but I think what I have seen reflects that generally. But I think TV is doing awesome. And there are just a lot of TV shows I've been watching over the last few weeks that I just think are excellent and everyone needs to watch. Um, so I just wanted to briefly recommend some TV to you. I know you're not going to watch these because you don't have any time, but to everyone else might have time.
Yeah. Why don't you just go down your list and I'll just react as you go.
All right, so the first one is a television show called Say Nothing. It is on Hulu, which means it's on Disney Plus. Which is, by the way, it's very weird watching stuff like this on Disney Plus, but it is on Disney Plus. It is a historical drama limited series based on a nonfiction book called Say Nothing of the same name. It is a story about the Troubles in Northern Ireland in the 60s and 70s and etc. It is mostly about Dolores Price, who is a woman who is a member of the Irish Republican Army, and it's a really really good show. It's a really good show. It's really interesting. The show starts off with the kidnapping of a woman. Because television shows are so terrified that you're going to turn everything off within 5 minutes, so they always have to start with like something like, oh my god, let's get people's attention right away. So it begins with the kidnapping of a woman. It's just like this woman has like 10 children, and suddenly she's like in the shower while one of her children is off getting food for the rest, and suddenly there's a bunch of masked people in her home kidnapping her. This turns out to be a woman who is captured and murdered by the IRA. So you realize not long after the scene that the people that have kidnapped this woman are the heroes, quote unquote, of the story. They're the people you're going to be following. And that's, I think, just a great setup for what the show is. This is a show that is absolutely showing how the British were pretty merciless in their colonization of Ireland and what they did to the Irish people. But also it is not afraid to look critically at what the IRA did to fight back against the British. Like the bombings, killings, murder, like someone suspected of siding with the British or informing to the British was just disappeared. And it's a very complicated story of a young girl who was kind of indoctrinated into fully believing into these things, brought into the IRA, did a bombing in London, went to jail for it. Like it is harrowing and brutal, but like the weird thing about the show is it's also very fun and funny at the same time. Like I don't know how that's possible, but it is. It's just a really great show. It's 9 episodes. Would really recommend this. Just fantastic television.
Yeah, I was going to say toward the end there, it sounds really heavy and kind of hard to stomach almost, but it sounds like they know how to lighten things enough at least to keep it watchable.
Yeah, I mean, it's like I think a good comparison point for me is kind of some of Scorsese's gangster pictures, where obviously, like by the end of those stories, they are very harrowing and dramatic, but like you need to show it was fun to be a gangster.
Mhm.
And I think important part of this is showing that these are kids. They're very young when they are first enlisted into the IRA, and show like the power and the fun that they had as young kids, like getting to do this thing and freedom fighting. They like, this is essentially Star Wars, right? They are the rebels working against the evil British Empire. And like showing how that was fulfilling for them and fun, and they're like finding themselves in the middle of it. And so it has all that, and it captures all that very realistically, and you really fall in love with these people as they do that. But then obviously there's the other side of the coin as well, and so it shows that as well.
Cool.
So from there, the other 2 shows I wanted to talk about are a little bit more lighter fare. There is a show on Apple TV right now called Shrinking. This is We are in season 2 of Shrinking. This is a show written by Jason Segel, who stars in it, and Brett Goldstein, who people might know as from the television show Ted Lasso. He played. What did he play on Ted Lasso? What was the name of the character? Roy Kent. He played the aging soccer star on Ted Lasso. I think Ted Lasso is a great comparison point because I don't know. You didn't watch Ted Lasso, did you, Matt?
No.
It's a show that basically is just like makes you feel good about yourself. It's like a very warm, fuzzy television show. It's very funny, but also very warm and fuzzy. And aren't people great? And I think that's a good comparison point. This is a show. Jason Segel plays a psychiatrist whose wife is killed in a drunk driving accident. He basically goes through a year and a half of hell where he kind of completely loses himself. And the show starts right when he's kind of just started to put his life back together, realize that he's not been being a very good father to his 16-year-old daughter. Um, and it's so good. It's so just delightful and fun and funny. It has Harrison Ford in it as an aging psychiatrist that works in the same building that Jason Segel does. And Matt, when I say this, I am being dead serious. This might be my favorite thing Harrison Ford has ever done. He is so fucking funny in the show. He's so great. Like, he's wonderful. He's absolutely wonderful. It also stars Jessica Williams. It has Krista Miller, who is I know her from the Drew Carey Show. That's what I knew her from. But
Okay.
it's just like the writing is very sharp, very funny. It's one of those shows that it's emotional. It will make you feel things, but you will also laugh. It's just I can't believe how like just quietly good this show is. Like I feel like people are watching it and enjoying it, but like it's not like I feel like Ted Lasso like took over the world, right? Everyone's like, "Oh my god, Ted Lasso, it's the best show in the world." And it's a similar type show, but not doing that. And I just I just love it so much.
Cool. It's funny, I love Harrison Ford. I don't really think of him as a comedic actor. I mean, he does like there's a funny side to many of his characters, but I don't think of him as laugh out loud funny. So
Yeah.
it really makes me curious to see what that looks like, or
Yeah. He
all out comedic Harrison Ford.
he's playing the straight man in the comedy, but like it's really good. He's very good at playing the curmudgeony old man stuck in his ways, but is also very, very, very funny. Um,
Awesome.
and then, so speaking of very, very funny old men, the last show I wanted to talk about is something that just came out on Netflix last week. It's called The Man on the Inside. And this is a television show by Michael Schur, who you might not recognize that name, but you will surely recognize the things that he has created. We are talking about The Good Place, Parks and Recreation, Brooklyn Nine-Nine, The Office. Basically, sitcoms in the last decade and a half that have taken over and been some people's favorite television shows of all time. This guy created them. So this is his newest thing. It stars Ted Danson as a retired man who is asked by a private detective to pose as a resident of a old folks home because she suspects that there's someone stealing expensive jewelry inside this old folks home. So he goes and does that, and hilarity ensues. It's another one of those, and kind of all Michael Schur shows are like warm your heart, like aren't people wonderful? Isn't everything great? This is very funny, but we just love all the characters type shows, and it's very, very good. All episodes are out right now. I think it's 8, 9 episodes. Very good.
Cool. Sounds really delightful.
Yeah, I can't like. It's really good. Ted Danson is one of the funniest men alive, and he's so good in this show.
I don't know if I've seen him in anything in, I don't know. I can't even guess. That's great.
What?
Very cool.
Yeah, you haven't watched The Good Place.
No, I have not watched The Good Place. I have not watched a lot of comedies of the recent years, honestly.
Well, I would recommend A Man on the Inside. It's apparently based off of a book, a French book, but it's so delightful.
Awesome.
So those are the three things that I really have been watching lately that I really like. So there you go, Matt. After you finish Rings of Power season 2, you've got 3 more shows to watch.
Perfect. I'll get right on it.
I also watched the first 2 episodes of Arcane season 2, and I had to stop because I was like, I don't remember anything that happened in the show. I'm gonna have to go back and watch season 1 of Arcane. So have you watched season 1 of Arcane, right?
Yeah.
I think you did.
I thought we did an episode on it.
I think we did, yeah.
Yeah, I really liked the first season. I plan to get to it. For some
Probably
reason,
gonna have to rewatch the first season. This is
Yeah.
what I'm predicting.
my recollection of the first season is I kind of felt like what a great ending to the story. You know, like
Yeah.
I didn't feel like there was a need for another season, but I'm definitely not starting out on a negative footing. I'm just saying I liked the way it ended, and thus I don't really feel compelled to just like rush and start the next season.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I don't know. I trust them. I think it'll be fun.
Yeah, it's funny. That's kind of how I feel about Squid Game, which
Mm-hmm.
is coming out. I think Christmas Day. Season 2 of Squid Game is going to be out on Netflix, and people are very excited about it. I watched the trailer; it looks interesting, but I'm also kind of like, man, I really enjoyed Squid Game as just like, wasn't this a fun TV show to watch? And then it's over now, and that story's done. But no, we're gonna get more. So I understand your feeling about that with Arcane,
Yeah.
because that's how I feel about Squid Game.
Yeah, that's another show that I never even finished the first season, even though I was enjoying it.
I thought we did an episode on it.
Not with me.
I remember Michael was on there because Michael really liked it.
You might have.
Maybe it was like a thing we did at the end of an episode, and you just didn't
I just tuned
listen to
out.
that part.
Yeah, possibly.
I don't know.
I don't know either. It's a good
Yeah,
thing
but
we
anyway.
record these things because we never. One funny thing about having a podcast is you come to appreciate how poor your memory is because you
Yeah.
can go
Oh,
back
yeah.
and you're like, what? We had a whole conversation about.
There is not like 1 week that goes by where someone doesn't leave a comment or someone somewhere that is like, when Scott said this in episode blah blah blah, and I'm like, I don't think I said that. You're lying. And they're not. I've just completely forgotten.
Yeah.
that we had those conversations.
Yeah.
All right. I think that's everything. I guess we could briefly talk about Moana 2. Did you want to do that?
I haven't seen it, but you can briefly talk about Moana too.
I really just wanted to talk about the fact that it made all the money in the entire whole world.
Yeah, that's cool.
Which is kind of insane. So Moana, Moana 2 had the biggest Thanksgiving opening weekend ever, like the biggest animated film opening ever. It made $243 million in the US last weekend, which is insane.
So it's particularly insane for a Thanksgiving weekend, right? Is that?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
And like, just like for comparison, the film that it beat in this record was Frozen 2, which was a very, very high expectation sequel to like one of the most successful. Like Frozen 1 made, I think, a $1.3 billion. Like Moana made like 600 million. So it like made half as much as Frozen, and then beat Frozen 2's opening weekend, Moana 2 did, by almost $100 million. Like it wasn't even close. It's really, really interesting. And I think part of this is, I don't know if we talked about this before, but Moana is like the most popular streaming thing ever. I think it's been like watched 1 billion times or something, something absurd, absurd number that like it's definitely like the most watched thing on Disney Plus by far. It's just incredibly, incredibly popular. Partially because the music is just so good. Like kids are just watching this movie over and over again, including mine. And so I guess people were just really jazzed about Moana 2. The funny thing is, you and I talked about this a couple weeks ago, but it was supposed to be a TV show. It was supposed to be a 6-episode Disney Plus thing that they were just going to drop on the service. And then at some point they went like, hey, this Disney Plus thing isn't working out for us. What if we just retooled this into a movie?
Yeah.
And it's going to make $1 billion.
What if we decided to make $1 billion instead of making $0?
Yeah. And like they still get to put it on Disney Plus at the end of this run, and it's just going to be incredibly popular there still, just like the TV show would have been. Like it's just the whole streaming model just didn't make any fucking sense. And I'm glad someone finally realized it's like, hey, movies like kids movies in theaters will make money. Duh.
Yeah, man, I'm glad we're over that now. Glad we're out of the streaming era.
I did go see this.
Okay, yeah. Tell us about it. I just wanted to interject and say, like, I really love Moana. I like my kids loved it when they were little, but like I loved it. Me as an adult, I just thought it was a really fun movie. I love the idea. I love the visuals. I love the music. I haven't seen it yet, mainly because honestly, the trailer just doesn't compel me that much. But and also I haven't heard the best word of mouth, which now that I've said that, I want to pass it to you because, you know, tell me, should I go see this movie?
Yeah, I don't know. So I also really loved Moana. The music is by Lin-Manuel Miranda, who is a musician I really enjoy. Like I really like Hamilton, and like I think this might be a bold thing to say. I've heard it echoed elsewhere, and I might agree with it. I didn't know I agree. I was listening to another podcast, and someone goes, "I think Moana might be Lin-Manuel Miranda's like best work." And I'm like, "Whoa, that can't be. Hamilton exists, and I love Hamilton." But the more I thought about it, the more I was like, yeah, maybe actually. And the big thing about the sequel is that it does not have music by Lin-Manuel Miranda.
Uh-huh.
Obviously, they were making a television show, and they decided to at the last minute retool it into a feature, and so they didn't like plan on paying the dump truck of money Lin-Manuel would require to do the music on this movie. So they just didn't have that in mind, and it is very apparent very quickly that this music is just not as good. So that I think will definitely color your enjoyment of the film. That the music just feels off. In some places, it feels like they're definitely trying to copy Lin Manuel Miranda, but almost in like, you know how you see like random videos or shorts on YouTube of people like Lin Manuel Miranda, but if he did this, and it's just like the most like stereotypical like boring impression that's just hitting all the obvious notes, or just like putting a Hamilton line like in the middle of another song and be like, that's how Lin Manuel would do it, and it's like, yeah, you're stupid.
Uh-huh.
At times, like it felt like that's what they were doing here, where it's just like we're really trying to ape this style very specifically, and we're going to try to channel it in this particular thing, and it just doesn't work very well. So the music was pretty disappointing. I will say my opinion of this movie is colored by the fact that I took my son to it, and this is his first movie theater experience. So, like, I would say for a good 50% of the movie, I was watching him watch the movie and not
Yeah.
watching the movie. It's fine. Like, it's fine. That's the thing. It's a retread of the first movie. Like, they hit a lot of the same story beats, but just twisted a little bit. Um, and the music's not as good, and you can definitely tell it used to be a TV show. Like you could probably watch the movie and go, "Hey, I bet this is where episode 3 ended, and here's the beginning of episode 4 right here." Like you can kind of feel that. It's not. I think I left the theater going like, "Hey, that was pretty bad," and I've kind of cooled on it. I've also like started enjoying the music more because the one thing that I can guarantee you will happen if you go see it is you will be listening to the music nonstop, because
Yeah.
my son just wants to listen to the music nonstop. And like maybe it's just this worming its way into my brain because I've heard it so many times, but I don't dislike it as much as I did at the time. So I think I'm warmer on the movie now than I was leaving the theater. But it's fine.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's just a truth about music is you listen to it a few times, suddenly it grows on you.
Yeah.
Either that or it becomes incredibly grating. But
Yes.
it sounds like that's not what happened. So
The rock song in this one is just like objectively worse than the one from the first movie,
uh-huh.
and yet it's been in my head all week.
Yeah. That's there's something charming about imperfection in everything really, but in like You're Welcome is one of the catchiest songs in the world, and The Rock is just objectively not doing a good job in that song,
Yes.
but it doesn't matter.
So, but here's what I'll say is I think Lin-Manuel Miranda is very skilled at writing lyrics to the person and music to the person. So I agree with you. Like The Rock struggles through that song. Yes. But I also feel like the song is helping him where it can.
Yeah.
And the one thing I will say about this song is that they did not do any favors for The Rock in this song. There are moments in it where like you can tell he's like frantically trying to keep up with a beat, and just like in a studio recording is just like a little late, like
Uh-huh.
just a little bit.
Yeah.
There's one line read in particular where I'm like, really? In the final version, really?
Yeah. You can
So
just
yeah,
imagine him taking off his headphones.
yeah.
I'm done. Yeah.
I feel bad for the two women who were tasked with writing the music for this, because like they're just like fucked from the,
Yeah.
the beginning. Like
Well, yeah.
people love the music in that movie so much, and even if you're like an incredible musician, which I'm sure they are, like you're just not gonna meet their expectations of what Moana music is going to be.
Well, I will watch it at some point, and
Yeah,
we'll see.
when it hits Disney Plus, we're going to watch it 8,000 times.
Okay.
We bought my son the Maui fish hook. Like, it's a plastic version of a
Oh,
Maui fish hook that he presses a button and it makes noise.
we have the Maui fish hook. Yes.
Okay, well,
Yes.
we have one too now, and my son will run around saying he's turning into different animals.
It's a very
saying chee-hoo.
it's a good toy. It's got good heft to it. It's well made. It's a good size. You appreciate a good toy when you find one.
I will say I don't think my son understands how a fish hook works, so he's definitely gotten it like stuck on stuff because he like puts it on and then pulls. I'm like, no, son, it's doing its job. It's hooking. You have to. You can't just keep pulling. It's not going to come out. He doesn't quite get it, but
that's great.
It was. I will say, like, going to see a movie with my son, like, all-time experience for me. Like, this has been something I've been looking forward to since we found out we were having a kid, and he was perfect. He was perfect. I could not believe it. He sat there the whole time. So, like, if we're judging the movie on the grounds that it wants to be judged on, which is like, will kids enjoy this movie? I think the answer, at least in my experience, is undoubtedly yes, because my son sat through the entire movie.
Yeah, which I think I bring this up possibly too often, but like, I actually put a lot of stock in that because kids, they process things differently than we do, but they're like, you can't argue against the taste of a child. If a child likes a movie, then there's something working about that movie.
Yeah.
And if anything, it's like, get out of your own way and just allow yourself to enjoy what is there to be enjoyed. Because if a kid can enjoy it and you can't, then maybe you've talked yourself out of having fun.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, no kid is saying, hey, this was just a retread of the first movie.
Right. Right.
But yeah, you should see it. I don't know if I would pay the $100 it would take to go to the theater with all your children.
Yeah, and buy them popcorn. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, it was so much money. We bought him popcorn and cookies and some sour gummies, which was Sour Patch Kids, which he loved.
Yeah.
But
no,
it's expensive, man. It's expensive.
You're not exaggerating. It would take $100 to take my kids and me and get us all one snack.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's a lot of money. And Alamo Drafthouse was nice enough to give me a kid's discount on the ticket. It was $1.50 less for his ticket.
So it was a total of what, $18 or what?
Yes, I think so.
Yeah, I don't know.
Somewhere around there. Yeah. I hadn't been in the movie theater in a while, and I like, it's expensive, but when you're going just like you and one other person, it's not that expensive. Yeah, it's starting to throw family into the calculus. Shifts things pretty dramatically.
Sure does.
All right. I think that's it, right? I think we're done.
I think that's it.
Yeah. If you have any opinions on Die Hard, on Moana 2, or on any of the excellent television shows that I talked about this week, feel free to reach out to us via email at doofmedia@gmail.com, over on Instagram @doofmedia, or on Twitter @doofmedia. I'm going to say I'm not on Twitter much these days, Matt. The algorithm has exhausted me to the point of I don't want to see this stuff anymore.
I think honestly the thing is now fully in the swing of happening that I predicted several years ago, which is that there are so many actually well-built AI bots that you can't just tell that they're AI bots anymore. And so a substantial fraction of what you're seeing on the internet is just AI. Which means we're all just going to stop using the internet.
Hooray!
Hooray! Well,
Except for the part where you download our podcast. Please use it for that.
Yeah, we're definitely still real and always will be.
Yep.
But we'll look back on the era between roughly 2000 and 2020 as the time that we all use the internet. All right. If you're not already subscribed to the Doofcast, we encourage you to subscribe and listen to some humans for once. You can find us on any podcasting platform.
And if you like what we do here and want to support us, please consider becoming a patron of Doof Media. You can head on over to patreon.com/doofmedia and support us at any of the available levels. We just released a new exclusive Patreon podcast just yesterday, where Matt and I are taking a look at the television show From. We are calling the podcast 2 because we're hilarious.
Yes.
We looked at the first 2 episodes of From yesterday, and we're going to be continuing 2 episodes at a time for the foreseeable future. So if you don't want to miss that, head on over to patreon.com/doofmedia and pledge and join and listen to that episode and all the future ones to come.
I still chuckle every time I think about the name of that podcast, which
it's so stupid,
yeah.
and I love it so much.
Yeah, either that tells me how funny it is or how dumb I am. I can't tell which.
It's a little of both.
A little of both.
We also have book club tomorrow, I guess today, the 6th of December, as you are listening to this, at 9:30 p.m. on our YouTube channel. We're going to be talking about The Bright Sword, the newest novel from Lev Grossman. I'm going to enjoy picking this thing apart with you, Matt. So if you want to hang out and talk about this book for a couple hours, join us on YouTube at 9:30 p.m. on YouTube.
Yeah, sounds good. Please consider giving the Doofcast a rating and or review on Apple Podcasts. Each review helps us to get more exposure and introduces new people to the content that we make here.
That's right. All right, next week on the show, hold on, let me just read this prepared statement from...
Did Bezos actually send this one, or was it...
No, it's one of his, I think it's his executive assistant, but,
sucks.
Hey, the check spends either way, you know what I mean?
That's true.
Next week on the podcast, we will be watching the incomparable Rings of Power Season 2, probably the greatest thing ever to put to the screen in the history of the universe. So that's what we'll be doing next week.
Great.
I have only watched the first 2 episodes of the season, actually, so I've got some work to do before next week, but that's what we're gonna do.
All right,
Wings of Power Season 2. Here we go.
All right.
My name is Doof, and you'll do what I say. My name is Doof, and you'll do what I say.